From the studios of Cheshire TV in Keene, New Hampshire, it's The Men's Room, a show by men, about men, and for everyone. Sponsored by the Monadnock Men's Resource Center and hosted by Damien Licata and Forrest Seymour.
Hello and welcome back to The Men's Room, sponsored by the Monadnock Men's Resource Center. I'm Damien Licata, this is Forrest Seymour, and we're going to be your hosts, and I'm really excited about today's guest.
Absolutely.
We're going to have
a
really interesting conversation.
Yes.
And this is our third go-around.
It is, and we're like pros now.
Yeah.
I hear, they tell us.
That's what they tell us.
Yeah.
We're getting some good feedback from the community.
Yes.
I'd love to get
some hits on the web.
Some hits on the website,
yeah.
That's right. You can see our show now on YouTube and
on mmrconline.org.
That's right. So,
yeah.
So go there and give us some feedback. Email us back. If we get enough emails, we'd like to be able to start reading some of them on the program.
That's right. And the other piece, one of the other things that the Monadnock Men's Resource Center does is a Sunday evening drop-in group at 7 o'clock at 25 Roxbury Street in Keene, and we'll talk more about that at the end of the show. And you can always get more information about that at our website. And I just wanted to just wish you a happy solstice.
Well, thanks.
Because, of course, last night was the longest night of the year.
That's right.
And
that's right, it was.
I'd like to sort of think that maybe that's symbolic of some sort of, the longest night is over, and the light is coming, and, maybe around, for men, the light is coming, perhaps.
Okay, light dawns on Marblehead. Okay.
And in this room, right here, right now.
Let's hope so.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot.
Sure.
One of the things that I wanted to talk about today was this. Our last guest last week mentioned,
yes.
I'm not sure if it was on the air or not, but in a conversation, he
right.
mentioned that there was some legislation introduced in New York in which individuals could change the gender on their birth certificate.
That's right. City of New York.
In the city of New York.
Yeah.
Yep.
The Board of Health, I think,
initiated this.
They had, right, and almost passed, almost became the law of that land, of that city.
Yep. And it's an interesting concept. The idea that regardless of biological gender, this isn't just for transgendered people who might want to, who have for example undergone sexual reassignment surgery.
Right.
Not just for
yeah.
them. This is for this would be for anybody who.
Yes.
Who felt like they wanted to do that.
Well, it's a little more complicated than that. They had to. I mean, the way the regulation would have worked was that the individual would have had to live as the new gender for 2 years,
right.
and have to document that by a couple of by a doctor, by a psychotherapist. So it wasn't just oh hey I think I want to change my gender today, and maybe tomorrow I'll change it again. I mean, you had to make a commitment. And people are not going to live. I mean, we all know that if we're not going to live as the other gender, unless we really want to.
Right.
So I mean, that would be a challenge.
Right. But what's interesting about this to me is this whole idea of it gets you thinking about gender as either biologically determined or a social construct.
Yes.
And if it's just a social construct, of course, then it can be up to the individual, I would say.
Well, yeah, it's complicated, I think, because is it, even if you get sexual reassignment surgery, is that changing the biology, or is that not changing the biology? I mean, should anybody be allowed to, whether they live for 2 years as the opposite gender, or whether they get surgery or not? I mean, you're born, your gender is gender, right? I mean, is that not?
Well, that's the question, isn't it? I mean, is it though? I mean, I think that oftentimes, there is the physical, there are the hormones, and there's the equipment.
Yeah.
But there's also all of this other stuff that comes along with gender that is what society is sort of defined as. This is men are this, women are this. I mean, there are folks who have made entire careers out of this premise. Men are from Mars,
right.
from Venus.
More than a career, a whole industry.
That's right.
Based on this assumption that we have to be, if we're not coming from Mars in the right way, we got to read the book and then know how to be the right Martian.
Exactly. Exactly. Right. And, you know, I think it's a very simplistic way of looking at the problem and or the issue. I don't even think it's a problem necessarily, but I think that it can become a problem.
It's a problem for our society because our society doesn't know how to deal with situations where people don't quite fit into those narrow boxes of, you know, this sort of male Mars, female Venus thing. You know, that we're. Because who does really fit into those boxes?
I guess you know, they say in every stereotype there is a grain of truth.
Do they say that?
And I've heard it.
Yeah.
And the thing is, but the fact of the matter is that there's also, you know, in every stereotype many more contradicting situations to that stereotype. And I think we get into a little bit of trouble when we start to define people by, you know, these labels, and that includes male and female.
Right, absolutely. I mean, which are so so ingrained. I mean, I think that they are like the bedrock in a way of how our society looks at so many things. I mean, we're kind of coming into this world with this notion: you're either male or you're female, and from that sort of binary black and white worldview, we then begin to look at other things in the world in the same way, which I think is unfortunate because it's not true for gender. I don't think. I mean, I'm spacing his name, but the whole gender spectrum thing, they did a movie about him recently, a couple of years ago. You know, the guy who did all the sex research back in the 50s, and I'm sure our viewers are going, Kinsey, the whole Kinsey thing, and the whole spectrum of, you know, between you know, your sexual orientation, you know, and that you fall in this whole, you know, it's not like black and white.
Well, we gotta get to our guest, but you know, the point.
I bet our guest will have
the thing we gotta remember is the show is about men, and why do we care about this? Because these kinds of definitions limit our options in life as to what we can do as men.
It's true. It's true, and for women too. But I think, you know, this is the men's room.
But this is men's room.
Okay. So our guest today, and it's very exciting to have Jeremy with us, Jeremy Youst. See if I can read my handwriting here. Jeremy has been leading transformative journeys with men and women for 30 years. In 2001, he was the co-founder of the Power of Breath Institute, through which he does workshops and trainings in personal development and breathwork. In 2002, he was a co-founding steering committee member of the Monadnock Men's Resource Center, which is, of course, the sponsoring organization for this TV show. In 2003, he was the national coordinator for the International Breathwork Foundation, and in 2005 became a board member for the International Breathwork Training Alliance, and is in private practice in Spofford, New Hampshire. Welcome, Jeremy.
Thank you. I'm Jeremy, and I'm from Marnus.
Goodness gracious.
Yes, Mars and Venus.
You've come a long way. I'm grateful to have you.
It's a new planetary body that hasn't been discovered yet by science.
It's taken up to the place of Pluto, because they booted Pluto.
That's right. We need to have that 9 planetary bodies.
So
it's great to be here.
So you just flew in, and your arms are really tight.
Yeah. Right? It's great to be here and to see you both doing this. This is really important work. Thank you.
Well, you've worked, as we said in the intro, you've worked around issues of transformation and growth and spirituality with men and women. And of course, you know, our focus here is to talk about sort of the men. And I'm wondering what your thoughts are about men and spirituality and sort of the work you have done. What have you seen? You know, any broad or specific sorts of trends that you see with men, and maybe changes over these 30 years?
Well, as we said earlier, as we were speaking earlier, it's hard to make generalizations that you know, that can apply to everyone. Certainly, my own life has been an exception to many rules, as you well know. But from my own experience, I was raised pretty typically with an absentee, commuting, distant father, alcoholism, the whole sort of profile, and felt really disconnected, as I've experienced most men to feel, from ourselves, from each other, especially our brothers. Now, here's the other thing that came into the mix for me, is I'm an identical twin.
Right. Yeah.
So, quite interestingly, I was born with this primary connection with another male who looked like me and acted like me, and he was better in ping pong, though. That was the thing.
A little competition there.
You know.
Nonetheless, competition going on.
Nonetheless, yet in my socialization, I was taught, I feel, not to trust men, that intimacy was dangerous, that to really connect with myself or with other men in particular was not an okay thing, or it had certain parameters, guidelines, competition, like you're talking about, or
and that whole physical intimacy, homophobia thing, which is
that was
so out there and sometimes not spoken
about. And then, of course, in high school, when a lot of young men go through that sort of gender identity, sexual orientation questioning, and it's, I guess, quite normal. There's no role models, there was no teachers, there was no nothing. You kind of had to figure it out yourself, or decide for yourself what role I was going to fit into. And for me, it was like, can I just get through and fly underneath the radar so I don't get noticed too much?
I think part of that socialization process, that gender socialization for men, it doesn't serve very well in that function, because it often is telling men what they are not. Yeah. More than what they are.
I think that's the definition of sort of identity in adolescence. What am I not versus what am I? All the way through my 20s, when, for me, I remember hearing about this opening the heart workshop for men. And I had a close friend who was involved in this it was a Robbie Gass, Spring Hill, Massachusetts, and a way of working with men and working to sort of break down those barriers. Now, this was my idea of hell. Okay? A room full of 40 stinky, sweaty, smelling, no-neck men, yelling and screaming and doing the wild man thing. I was like, no way, I do not want to do this at all.
This is the kind of stuff people make fun of on TV.
Oh, yeah. That what do men do when they get together? They go out in the woods and they beat their chests. Right. It's this whole archetypal thing. And I didn't want anything to do with it. I felt really intimidated by that whole scene. Yet, at the strong encouragement of my friend, I went to what turned out to be one of the most profound experiences of my life, which was to go to this opening the heart workshop for men and be in the presence of what turned out to be the thing that I was missing the most and I had longed for most of my life, which was connection.
Isn't it connection with other men?
Connection with other men. Connection with
safe connection
with the brotherhood.
Yes.
Yeah. And I'm tying this a segue into this idea of spirituality, because what I found was, especially as a man in this culture, that to really connect in to whatever that higher power is, that thing that's bigger than you, that was okay to do it alone or according to a certain prescription defined by whatever religion you're following or your parents followed or you wanted to rebel against, perhaps. But to find that kind of sense of connection, intimacy in a safe way with another man, there was just no way you could do it. There was no safe outlet for that. And why would you want to? And what would that lead to? What would it mean? Was I gay? All of those fears and doubts that we all carry.
Isn't it interesting that men have to gather under these really extraordinary circumstances in order to find that connection?
Yeah.
And what does that say about how foreign this is?
Yeah. But what do you think? And I share a lot of both of your feelings about this, but nonetheless, I think for a lot of men, they experience connection and would probably say, I do that. I do sports with my buddies, or we go hunting, or we go. We do this thing, or I think of all the men who are at war right now, and a horrible experience in many ways, and yet the camaraderie that gets built in those sorts of experiences. So I just want to I'm just wondering, what's the difference? What you're talking about, as that kind of connection, how does that differ from the kind of connection that we might think of being a little more traditional for men?
Okay, the best way I could put it would be, men seek through the current forms to find connection from their hearts versus moving from their hearts to create connection and create forms that support that connection. So we will connect some way because we're starved for this. We will join a men's organization or a men's club or fraternal organization. We'll armor ourselves and beat the hell out of each other on a playing field just to find some way to say, yes, it's actually very safe to be in a group of men. This is what I learned at this workshop, was exactly the opposite of what I thought was going to happen, happened, which was,
you didn't get beat up.
not only did I not get beat up, I got supported, and to begin to more deeply heal the wounds of being raised in an absentee father situation, to abusive situation, to not trust the hand of a man. I mean, a man's hand was the first thing that hit my body to create pain when I was born. My first breath was associated with a man's hand slapping me on the bum. This was the 50s, of course. This is the way you got born. Oh, great, look, he's crying. Great. And you're like, what the heck just happened here? I come into this universe, and the first thing that happens is this guy smacks me on the ass. No wonder we do that, when, on sports, that the opposite of what I could imagine now as being supportive and safe really took place. So I learned to mistrust the hand of man, or only find that connection through competition. The workshop, Opening the Heart, was just about that, was to say, not only do we not have to follow these role models, but we have an opportunity here to reclaim the lost brotherhood, so to speak. In fact, I was talking before, this is a workshop that my friend Bill Beardsley, I guess, is going to be on the show next week. Is that right?
Yep.
We're going to be doing in March, called Reclaiming the Lost Brotherhood.
Wow.
Yeah.
And this is open to the public?
This is open to men, yeah. And it's a small group of men. It's sort of our pilot program, and it's a 2-day workshop, Saturday and Sunday. I think it's March 30th and 31st. And the first day will be to create structures of safety and connection from using the tool that I'm most involved with, breathwork, connected breathing or rebirthing breathwork, and creative writing, sharing our stories, doing dyads groups, and then the second day we'll do a pipe and a sweat lodge ceremony, an activity where what I have found over the last 25 years of doing this kind of ceremonial activity creates just a very visceral bonding.
Well, I know that Damien really wants to talk to you about the sweat lodge a lot, but I wanted to say, is there
never
no way.
Just for the record.
But before we go there, we're going to go there.
Okay.
Before we go there, how can people get more information about this?
Probably the best way would be to go to powerofbreath.com, www.powerofbreath.com, which is my website, and there'll be a link about me, and on that link, I'll probably be advertising the workshop, Reclaiming the Lost Brotherhood.
Okay.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you, since we're talking about the breath work.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk about the sweat lodge? Okay, go on.
I've said really all I need to say.
Okay, we're going to talk about it some more.
But I'd be interested to hear what you have to say about in doing this breath work. You do breath work with both men and women.
Yes.
Correct?
Yeah.
And I'd be interested to hear what you have to say, or what you've observed in terms of how men and women might, if they do, experience that differently.
Yeah. Good question. Let's just a few basics about breath work. The kind of breath work, there's many different forms of breath work been around for thousands of years. In the Western society, the most recent, since the 70s or so, rebirthing or holotropic breath work are the two big schools. And it's basically the conscious intervention of our respiratory cycle. The things that unite breath work worldwide are usually there's no connection, or there's a connection there's no pause between the inhale and the exhale. Okay, the breath is diaphragmatic, using the muscle that the body is designed to use to bring in energy and oxygen. And the exhale is relaxed. And this is really, really where the point you get to see this. Not forced. So it's go ahead, take a couple of breaths, gentlemen. There's an immediate relaxation when we give ourselves permission to breathe fully and deeply and let go, not force or control, not for the exhale. Now, here's where I find the difference, especially in doing this work individually, which I've done for 10 years, and through the power of breath school, doing the trainings that I've done for the last 5 years, that men tend to control and force the exhale, generally a lot more than women. Isn't that interesting? We're like this, in the Western world, we're like these little automatons that want to push the stone up the hill and push it down. You know, I mean, I love going back and forth to Keene now in Chesterfield Hill. It's like, who can go 75 or 80 miles an hour up Chesterfield Hill with their big engine? You know, we don't want to wait. We don't want to relax or slow down at all. So teaching men, especially, all people, but especially men, to relax and let the exhale go. Let exhale go with gravity is probably the biggest challenge of all. Because not only what you find is, even if I were to say, okay, let's take a deep breath right now, why we don't breathe fully is primarily because of subconscious defense patterns that have established itself in our bodies in a way to protect ourselves, you know, from stress or whatever. You know, dad's home, like this. Okay, we do that fight or flight response. The adrenals kick in, the muscles contract, we get really tight, and we don't breathe, and the breath gets really shallow. When we're breathing fully and in a relaxed way, we're feeling fully. And mostly in this world, especially in a locker room, shall we say, or in a men's room, are you breathing fully in your men's room? This is great, isn't it? No, you like
a little bit.
Like this, right? We're holding our breath. That creates and leads to, over time, chronically, to all kinds of physical and emotional, psychological issues, stress-related illnesses. Now, what's the one thing that we don't really regulate right yet so far, for the most part, is our breath. Breath, each breath we expel 1 million particles. So you're breathing in some of those particles that have been through my lungs. So we're actually sharing the air just by sitting with each other. So breath, just without anything else, creates this kind of knowing or understanding or intimacy, if you will, if you want to stretch it. Connection. Yeah. So when we sit in a circle of men and facing each other, we have the energy of looking at each other, listening with some facilitation, so we're not talking on top of each other, listening and sharing the air. There's a physiological experience. Okay. Why I primarily do breath work and other kinds of empowerment work is because it's fast and it's effective. I'm a good American, you know. Less for more. Come on. Let's go. Let's get there. And so I have found over the years of doing groups, I started doing men's work right after that workshop in 1989 and did many rounds, many years of small men's circles, doing various different kinds of activities and ceremonies and sharing and emotional work and breath work. I found that through all of that, when we are able to take the time, which is a big commodity right now, time is money, as men especially, make the time, even if it's 5 or 10 minutes, or let's say one evening every 2 weeks, that we're so starved for that feeling of support, actually the kind of safety that many men feel amongst each other, but not with people of the opposite sex, with women, okay, for all those issues, that there is a sudden rush of good feeling and a sense of support, as we know from the drop-in group. Just sitting at one time, at one place for a couple of hours at the drop-in group on Sunday night, people's shoulders relax, and you breathe easier, and you're more forthcoming with what's going on for you. And when we leave, we have that same feeling of like, wow, you know, like, how come I didn't know about this? This is so supportive, right? So it's like permission is what we really want to find ways to do, is to create spaces and times for permission to allow that connection to occur amongst each other.
So I was going to say, so talk about how, so do you want to talk, we don't have a lot of time left, how the sweat lodge, how do you see that piece fitting? I mean, you talked about, you mentioned that that's going to be part of this weekend you're going to be doing in March. Yeah. And I know this is an important part of your
Another broad and risky generalization, but I'm going to say it anyway, is that I have found in my work with men that men like to do stuff. That's how we're, you know, we want to, you know, play with toys, climb trees, swing on ropes, jump in the pool. You know, we want to do things. that a lot of that connection and bonding happens by doing things together. A sweat lodge is a Native American and other indigenous people around the world, but the pathway that I'm following is from more of a Native American tradition. Although saunas, right, are, you know, in Finland, Scandinavia, right, they came from sacred purification ceremonies. When we participate in that physical doingness of putting the blankets on the lodge, building the fire, collecting the rocks, doing all of this, that it puts our minds attention on something.
Than just the like sweating part. It's the whole preparation.
It's the whole process. We take a whole day of it. We talk about it. I give a thorough explanation of what we can expect. It's not compulsory, even with the 12 men. If somebody feels like they're not up for it, they can be a gatekeeper. They can help bring the rocks into the lodge. And so we create this space where we sort of mentally, emotionally, and physically align or put our attention and intention towards one goal or achievement.
And one thing, I've done a couple of sweat lodges with you, and one thing that I have really felt about those experiences is that it's challenging. It's like, earlier we touched on what it's like for men to be in combat together, and it's not the same, but there is this quality to being in a sweat lodge, which is it is arduous at times and hard work, and you're doing it as part of a team, and you're sharing this intense experience together.
All right, maybe I'll try.
Okay.
Ooh, all right. As long as we get, because as long as we have
this choice there, Damien, we won't force you
on the floor.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Right. Well,
and in the lodges that we do, we also make it available. So if after the first or second or third or fourth round or second or third round you need to leave, you can do that.
Which I do have to do.
Yeah.
And we have to wrap up.
We do.
We do. Okay.
Okay. Running out.
So what else?
We can talk for a whole other show.
And
maybe
we will.
you'll come back.
We will. Can we have you back?
Yeah. Oh yeah. This is wonderful. And I just want to, if I can close with one quick thing, I want to encourage the men who might be listening to this program that you know inside of you already. It's not something you have to read in a book or hear even from a friend. You know already inside of you that there's something that you can tap into that's bigger than you, that you feel support from. And that by taking a risk, sometimes I took the risk to go to this workshop that I thought was going to be miserable. By taking a risk, sometimes what's on the other side is a whole new world, a whole new way of relating to yourself, to your partner, your wife, or whomever. And that I encourage any man to take a risk, come to the drop-in group, make connections, and see if there's something there that can quench a thirst that perhaps you've had your whole life.
Thank you for thank you for bringing your world here.
You're welcome.
From whatever planet that
yeah, Marnus.
So we do want to take a minute to just talk about the drop-in support group, that drop-in men's group that the Monadic Men's Resource Center is sponsoring.
Every Sunday night, and it's at the Life Art Center from 7 o'clock to 9.
That's right. 25 Roxbury Street in Keene, right next to the Obashan's Hardware at the back of the parking lot.
Right, and it's a drop-in group. You can come when you want. Don't come if you don't want, and there's no commitment involved. Right. And we are really out of time.
Okay.
I just want to say again, I'm Damien Licata, a co-founder of the Monadic Men's Resource Center. For Seymour, co-founder of the Monadic Men's Resource Center, and a therapist in private practice here in Keene.
That's true. Thank you very much.
Thanks for tuning in.
Yeah.